Hi, I'm David from Flohr Pools. In today's video, we're going to teach you how to winterize your in-ground swimming pool. The goal of winterizing your pool is to prepare it for the spring. Winterizing your pool can be broken down into 3 separate parts. 1, preparation. 2, taking care of the pool equipment. 3, taking care of the pool. Here are some of the tools you may need when closing down your pool. A flathead screwdriver, a 7/16 wrench, a 7/16 nut runner, and channel lock. This will cover ladders, vacuuming the pool, your water chemistry, and the plumbing of the pool. Remove all ladders from the swimming pool. Wash with a garden hose and allow to dry. Store away from any chemicals, especially chlorine. Next, vacuum your pool. Next, we'll talk about water chemistry. First, chlorine. Your chlorine must be 3 parts per million and maintained for 3 days leading up to closing the pool. Shock the pool with shock tablets or granular chlorine 2 to 3 days prior to winterizing the pool. Failure to do these things will result in the inefficiency of your winterizing chemicals. Next is total alkalinity. A normal range for alkalinity during the summer is 100 to 150 parts per million. That number is expected to fall during the course of the winter, so we want to keep the alkalinity at 150 parts per million or more. Maintaining a proper alkalinity helps maintain a proper pH level. Next is the pH. 7.2 to 7.8 is ideal for the summer. 7.6 to 7.8 is recommended for the winter. If your pH is off balance, it can cause irreversible effects to the pool, including wrinkles in the liner. Here are some examples of what a low pH can do to some equipment. All warranties are conditional, and if the correct pH levels are not maintained, warranties are invalid. Next, we'll talk about the water level for your pool. We want to keep the water 2 inches below the skimmer. If your pool has a vacuum port, you can use the vacuum port to lower the water. Otherwise, you will need a submersible pump. For both DE 3620 and sand filters, turn the pump off, place the multi-port on waste, and turn the pump back on until the water is 2 inches below the skimmer. Make sure you are using the vacuum port to remove the water. Next, we'll talk about the plumbing of the pool. Flohr Pools uses green flex pipe, which is black in color. These lines do not need water removed from them. Pools that have PVC piping and fiberglass pools, the lines do need to remove the water, plugged, and antifreeze needs added to each line. All valves and filters need drained. If you have a sliding board in the pool, you will also need to remove the water from the lines. You can use a wet-dry vacuum to remove water from the line. Pour pool-grade antifreeze into the line, usually a half a gallon per line. The plumbing on the slide must also be drained of all water. Next, we'll talk about taking care of the pool equipment. The goal is to clean, dry, and get the equipment ready to use for the spring. This section will cover pumps, filters, chlorinators, heaters, and saltwater systems. First, the pump. Remove both drain plugs from the pump. Remove the clear lid, disconnect, and store inside for the winter. Next, we'll talk about filters. First, sand filters. First, you want to backwash the filter. After backwashing, remove the drain cap and place inside the pump basket for springtime. Position the multi-port to winter mode. Make sure to replace your sand every 3 to 5 years. Next, we'll talk about the DE 3620 filter. Again, you want to backwash the filter. Remove the clamp and clean the grids using a garden hose. For additional cleaning of the grids, use Flohr Pools Filter Flush. Remove the drain plugs, the sight glass, and the pressure gauge, and store them in the pump basket for winter storage. Position the multi-port handle between filter and rinse. Loosen multi-port from bulkhead fittings. Drain any water from the multi-port. Replace the multi-port back onto the filter loosely. Next, chlorinators. Chlorinators need to be worked on outside, never inside. Check the path of water flow to make sure it is not blocked. Clean the chlorinator, dry, and store inside. Next, we'll talk about heaters. First, cover gas heaters. For recent heaters, unscrew both inlet and outlet unions from pipes. Remove the winter plug from the manifold. For older heaters, find the winter drain plug and remove. This plug may be internal. Remove the pressure switch. For heat pumps, both the water in and both the water out must be disconnected. All water needs vacuumed out of the heat pump. Make sure the lower portion is 100% dry. Always pour pool-grade non-toxic antifreeze into the top of the heat pump and continue until the antifreeze flows out the bottom of the heater. Next, we'll talk about salt pools and chlorine generators. Your salt cell has a great chlorine potential when the water temperature is warm, 70 to 80 degrees. When the water temperature cools down, the cell production decreases. Cell will put out 0 chlorine when the water falls below 50 degrees. For this reason, it is important to have chlorine tablets on hand to use this time of year. Salt cell maintenance. All cells have limited lifespan and will need replaced after time. How you take care of the cell and your pool chemistry can affect the lifespan. All cells need cleaned on a regular basis. Cells do need replaced. Check cell in about 2 to 3 years. Expect to replace the cell in 3 years' use. To test your salt cell, when the pump is on, at the control select superchlorinate. Then you want to test the chlorine in front of the skimmer and test the chlorine level in front of the return. If working properly, chlorine reading will be higher in front of the return. Reset the unit from superchlorinate to auto. Things to remember with the salt system. The salt generator is a nice tool, but please do not ignore the pH and total alkalinity. You still need to monitor chlorine, testing it on a regular basis. All salt pools will use the standard winter kit and an additional 1 quart of Minitrol Plus at winterizing for scale patrol. Do not raise the salt level above 3,200 parts per million. Simple test strips are used to confirm the reading of the salt control. In the next part, we'll talk about taking care of the pool itself, which will cover chemicals, the skimmer, and covers. Chemicals. Safety first, always work with chemicals outside. Never mix 2 chemicals into the same container. Always add chemicals to water, never add water to chemicals. Once tablets are wet, use them up. Always follow written directions on a container. Next, clean the water line around the pool. Next, you want to add a winter kit into the pool. In-ground pools up to 30,000 gallons will use our large winter kit. If your in-ground pool has over 30,000 gallons, you may need an additional kit. To add the winter kit, first add the winter-grade algicide around the perimeter of the pool. Next, dissolve the winter chlorine in a bucket and add to the pool around the perimeter. Finally, add the stain preventer around the perimeter of the pool. Next, we will talk about the skimmer. You will need to add a gizmo into the skimmer. If you have a governing valve, you will need to remove it. Next, we'll talk about covers, which will include solid covers as well as a loop lock safety cover. This is a 2-person job. Fill 1 water tube at each corner first. Fill the water tubes 2/3 full. The 4 corners will help hold the cover in place while you fill each of the other water tubes. Next, we'll talk about the loop lock cover. Also a 2-person job. Lay the cover at one end of the pool. Use a large hex key to loosen brass anchors around the entire pool. Attach springs of the loop lock cover to one end of the pool, then walk cover to the other end of the pool and attach loop lock anchors to the corners. Attach the loop lock to the rest of the anchors using the installation rod. Special directions for loop lock. At closing, fill chlorine float with 5 large tablets. Around Thanksgiving and the 1st of March, Flohr Pools recommends that you loosen the corners of the loop lock cover and add additional algicide and additional chlorine to the pool. Next, we'll talk about fiberglass pools. The water level must be kept at the center of the skimmer. Do not pump down. You will need to monitor the water level under the cover during the winter. If the water level gets too high, you will need to drain some water out. If the water level gets too low, you will need to add water. All lines that are above elbow level must be blown out with air, compressor, and plugged. After plugging pipes at the pool end, fill each line with 1/2 gallon of antifreeze. All lines that are deeper than elbow level must be blown out with purge and seal plugs at the pump, filter, end of pipe. The skimmer must have a green gizmo and 2-liter plastic bottles filled with antifreeze. The 3 units are wedged tight in the skimmer to provide the needed protection for water expansion. Next, we'll talk about water slides. All lines that feed water slides, waterfalls, and water features must be blown out with air compressor and plugged. After plugging pipes at the pool end, fill each line with 1/2 gallon of antifreeze. Next is electrical connections. Electrical connections can vary pool to pool depending on your electrician. The pump must not be allowed to come on, not even by timer, during the winter. It is suggested to turn the breaker off so the pump cannot come on. If the breaker must be left on, take the tripper off of the timer. Reminder, all water must be removed from pumps, valves, filters, heaters, and other pool equipment. If you do not remove the water from these items, then water can freeze and crack and damage this equipment. Thanks for watching today's video. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to any of our 3 locations and make sure to check out our other videos. Thanks. Pretty good.